Yeah, I'm Brian here with Triple D Custom Saddlery. I like to show a variety of things that I make with leather on my show. So today I'm making a custom holster for a 1911 Kimber. Alright, I always start with a pattern that I make out of poster board, and I've got a lot of patterns. Sometimes I modify them. A lot of my work is so custom that I'll make new patterns for just about every gun. What I do is I take a little, this is a stitching awl, and I trace out on my leather for both sides. This is a 7-ounce Herman Oak strap leather. This particular holster, I'm going to put a piece of ostrich skin on just to give it an exotic look. Alright, so I got that traced, and I'm going to cut it out, and then I'm going to get the lining leather ready. I use a 2-ounce leather for lining the holsters with, so they have a smooth side on your gun, so it don't wear the surface. Main part of my holster, here's the liner that I've got ready. Of course, I'm going to glue the two rough sides together so you'll have a smooth side on both front and back of the holster. I've got my ostrich cut out the way I want it. I'm not going to cover the full holster, but I'm just going to do kind of a, if you can kind of see what I got going on there. Right here is where it's going to fold over, and I think it'll look pretty neat. Anyway, I just cut out a pattern, also a poster board for that ostrich. I'm going to dye this leather at this point and then glue the ostrich on. I'm going to stitch this line, this back line, and then the rest of it will be stitched with the border. But this right here in the field, I don't want a stitch line on the back, so I'm going to stitch this first and then put the liner on and then stitch the border. Alright, I've dyed my leather black. What I'm doing now is I'm taking my scratch awl that I use to rough up the surface, get it ready for glue. Just scratch it up pretty good. It gives the glue something to grab, so it'll hold a lot better. There's really no need to scratch, there's no need to scratch out the back of the ostrich. It's pretty porous material on the back. So what I'm going to do, I have my line marked, and I'm going to use this Barge all-purpose cement. Stay right on that line with my glue. I want it close as possible to the edge without going over. If you do go over a little bit on the line, it comes off pretty easy. If you get it quick, you can rub it off. Alright, I'm going to let that dry for a few minutes. Go ahead and hit the back of the ostrich. Now, I don't know as far as finishing the edges of ostrich. I'm not particularly sure what to do. What I've done in the past and what I did this time is I wet the edge and rubbed a little saddle soap on it, and then took a soldering iron and kind of melted the fibers on the edge. It seems to do pretty good, but I'm not sure. There may be another way out there. If anybody knows, you can let me know. I'd appreciate it. Get a good coat of glue on this. I don't want it bubbling up. Alright, so I'll let that dry for 2 or 3 minutes, let it get tacky, and then I'll join the two pieces. Okay, the glue's pretty tacky, so I'm going to take my pieces, carefully line it up on this edge. If I stick out on the top, it's okay, because I'm going to trim that when I put the liner on. Alright. Give it a little tap down, and I'm going to sew this edge right here first, and then I'll put my liner on. I'll sew the liner, stitch the liner in this area, and then when I join the two pieces together, then I'll sew the entire perimeter of the two pieces. So right now I'm going to sew this line right here. I'm ready to glue my liner on. Usually set it up, of course, both rough sides touching each other. Put a mark around it with a pin, works pretty good. And this is basically so I know where to put my glue and also to line it back up. So we're going to glue all these surfaces. I'm going to do the same thing. Let it sit for a few minutes and then stick them together and then sew the perimeters. Okay, the surfaces are fairly dry and tacky. What I'm going to do is line them. I'm going to line them back up around my pin marks. To get them set, I hammer them down. Alright, and then I'm going to trim the edges. I'll take a Dremel tool and I get, before I sew it, I'm going to get this area right here and there and finish the edges, stitch it, and then I'll be ready to make the two surfaces together. Okay, I've got the border sewn. The next step is to glue these pieces together. What I'm going to do first is glue the back side with the where the trigger guard is. I'm going to glue that. Both these surfaces I'll scratch up, put glue, stitch this one, and then come back and stitch the other side because it's a straight line. It's easier to do once you have this big bulge in the middle. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to glue these two sides and stitch them together. Alright, what I've done here, I've sewn this side and I wet it just right here in the center. I didn't get the edge where I'm about to glue, so I wet it. What I want it to do is kind of form a pocket. So I can fold this up and sew this side. So I'm just going to work on it and kind of fold it back about like that. Alright, that's about right. So I'm gonna lift this up. I've got my stitch line marked under here. I'm gonna put glue from here out, and I got it marked on this side too. I'm gonna glue from this line out, and then glue these two together and do the same thing as I did on this side. And once again, the reason I'm doing this side second is because it's much easier to just sew a straight line than it is to try to sew around the trigger guard once you have this piece folded up. It just makes it a little easier. Alright, both sides are sewn, the edges are finished. Next thing I want to do while it's still pretty flat is punch my holes. You can also do this with just a regular hole punch. You just punch 2 holes, the top and bottom, and then cut it between. I bought this Osborne, it's 1 3/4 inch hole punching, slot punching tool, and it sure does make it easier. Just line it up. There. Got it. The front side looked pretty good. Usually on the back I'll take an number 1 or alt edger and run the edge of it to kind of clean it up and run some dye down in there. And I'll be ready to wet the whole thing. I'll wet it with warm water and then start molding it to the gun. Okay, here's the finished product here. I got the gun here in the holster. It's all dried up. I've oiled it and put a Resolene finish on it. Get you a close up here. That's basically it. Appreciate you watching.